Good morning, or good evening, or afternoon. Welcome to another episode of The Value of Everything. Now, something a little bit tedious, a little bit frustrating has happened to me. I should really say to myself, well, what do you expect? But whenever I get thrown with anything adverse, let's just turn it straight into a podcast. So some people can, or myself can, mull over it and obtain some kind of value out of this experience. Also, just had a thought as well, just while I was flying through it. I've done 2 podcasts on Donald Trump recently, and there's this really worrying thing that I've just noticed that I was my sleep was broken last night, and I could actually remember the dream quite vividly, and it was about Donald Trump, and got me thinking how much I may have been thinking about Donald Trump, and really Donald Trump is pretty irrelevant to me. I'm here in Australia, a British person in Australia, and in terms of Donald Trump, is really no effect on me. But yeah, he is plaguing my mind. I guess if I'm in this social media sphere, I guess I will be a little bit more subjected to it. But even so, you think to yourself that where people are seeing people on TV, they go back to sleep and they start dreaming about that person. So not only does that person engulf just that couple of hours in their mind, that person might just be playing out as a character in their mind and be in this big dream scenario, and who knows what's the hell's going on beyond that point. So it is kind of interesting thought when it comes to media and how just a few things, maybe even that, like that certain clip, can just totally invade your mind, and you can spiral into this big imagination, and the airtime of your mind is a lot bigger than what you actually think it is, compared to just like seeing just a 5-minute clip. So that's quite an interesting thought. I don't think I've got too much more time without going into some really crazy shit about talking about that stuff. But I do remember one thing that was really interesting, but it was very strange, is when my nan was dying. She believed that she had some kind of cancer, which was giving her some dimension, which was potentially affecting the brain, or maybe it was not directly related, but maybe drug related. But even so, last time I saw her, all she kept on going about was George W. Bush. Now, for an old British woman, that's kind of strange, seeing how that's the sort of thoughts that are stuck in your mind when you're just about on your deathbed. I think she was talking quite negatively about George Bush, about him fucking things up, but really didn't. I mean, for an old lady, it didn't really. I don't think that person really had much of an effect on her life. Maybe she saw a few bits of him in the news, and maybe she saw things from people mentioning stuff, but it's kind of interesting how politicians, people not maybe plague, but totally invade people's minds. Now, let's get back to the main topic of this show. Now, I have been a little bit, shall I say, yeah, I think I shall say this. I have been a little bit no, actually, I need to mention something else beforehand as well. Last night, I had a very late night, and it was due to the fact that I was trying to upload my couple of podcasts. If I have newsworthy podcasts, I'll try and upload them on that night, or it was just usually one I had about China, but I was trying to upload it on that night, and it does take a little while of just the sound to get corrected, and then you to put all your buzzwords, and then you post it onto the WordPress, and then you post it onto YouTube, and all that jazz. But my Amazon S3 account was being quite frustrating. One of the smaller podcasts was working, but it was going to look a bit weird because it was one of the episodes ahead of the other one, so I didn't really want to release one episode ahead of the other one, even though it was not in a chronological order. So that was quite kind of frustrating. And then, yeah, just the websites that I use for uploading the podcast, like everything else was working. So the podcast for Google and the podcast, website like Google or news articles were working fine and dandy. But when I was using S3 and I was using, what was the other one? I was using WordPress. It was just crashing, and it was kind of interesting. So I needed to reboot the modem, and then it started to work again. But then when it came to uploading one of the podcasts, it was really annoying. It just got to 100% and then stopped. Well, it got to 100% with like the upload speed at max, and then the upload speed started to gradually drop down until it got to like 1 kilobit per second, to 0, and then it said it failed. So more than likely it's something to do with me. I can't start thinking that there's some major spy network that's really looking out for me, considering that I only probably get about 1 view per podcast on YouTube. But even so, well, that's probably for my least popular ones, but most popular ones, I guess, I'm up to about 40 views, so you can see my popularity at the moment. Not that fantastic, but I'll keep on going. I'll just keep on firing out my material until somebody likes me. I'm sure I can find somebody that might like me out there. Anyway, yeah, so if you are NSA and you're trying to stop me, I'll just keep on doing it. I'll put it on a torrent or something in the end, and I'll find a way around this to just get my podcasts uploaded. So yeah, that's one of my struggles. Trying to be the Hitler of podcasts. Next up, So I had been a little bit instant gratificationally inclined, and I remember actually a neighbour that said to me that there's this brilliant marketplace where everybody can go online and you can purchase something for a Fiverr, and they can do some amazing things for you. And I was like a kid in a candy store, because I thought that this tool would. And there was a number of tools that enabled it, especially like the search parts, because the value of everything really doesn't hit the top of the Google bar when you're talking about philosophy. I thought, oh yeah, maybe I could push myself up the ladder of Google search. So I sent out a few Fivers here and there to a few people, and noticed maybe a little bit of an increment of search responses on WordPress, but on YouTube I noticed that pretty much the searches crashed a bit. so maybe Google just sort of thought, right, now you're trying to go the dodgy mean, I'm going to make sure you get suppressed. So yeah, that wasn't quite great. And in the meantime, I tried to get one of those funky, slightly caricature-y images of myself, so you can see a personal image of me. I wanted it in a little bit of a flashy way. So that's a couple of days away. Hopefully that's all right. I won't spend one morning just trying to take a picture of myself and then putting it online. I got quite nervous with them saying that I not having the copyright material with Fiverr. They always have all these add-ons, so I had to spend not a Fiverr, but probably something in the region of about $25 for the caricature. But even so, it's still fairly cheap in comparison to you having to go to a proper designer and things like that. But where there was one other thing that I wanted, which was some kind of really creative, beautiful looking image of a symbol or something in a representation of my podcast, which would be like the thought experiment, something on the lines of philosophy, something on the lines of just me monologuing over a long time, thinking. I'm not quite too sure inclined. I did look up. There is a symbol for philosophy, and it looks pretty shit, that symbol. But that's my opinion anyway. And maybe I was thinking about using the capital V, small O, large E, and maybe creating some really crazy or doing something special with those letters to make it look very vivid and interesting and catching your eye. So when you're looking at a big list of other philosophers, maybe you might see my one first and go, "Ooh, who's that man?" But I went to one of the I won't mention names, but he was meant to be one of the best ones. I guess it was some kind of team in India, and even though I'm trying to send them a Fiverr anyway, you're not going to get too much. You got to think how much value you're going to get in return for sending out a Fiverr. So I mentioned I won't post it or anything like that, but it's I mentioned about having, obviously it's value of everything, and I was just saying, right, how can we make something very fast? I know I put like a galaxy picture on one of my YouTube pages, so I just was thinking, right, okay, let's just do everything. So what's the biggest thing that you can encompass everything on? So maybe like the space, and then maybe mention the words of, well, just space out all the letters. And when it came to, it's a funny noise from a car. Yeah, so when it came to the letters, maybe putting everything there, so value of everything, and then maybe just putting a little line in the bottom, so calling it thought experiments, just giving some identity and yeah, something a little bit more clickable to other people. And I really, maybe I wanted something very simple, not simple. I think the best kind of design sometimes are simple yet very creative and quality, and all of those things like wrapped up in one. But it can't be too much of a muchness. Now, I sort of outlined that to them. I did mention about potentially throwing in a galaxy space or something like that. But when it came back, the request I had did look a little bit like what? Because I had like a galaxy in behind, and it was very clip arty, and then the stars and everything just looked a little bit like some kind of tarot card sort of reader, which was obviously not the image that I want to portray for a philosopher. And or maybe just like a little bit like Mickey Mouse's gown in I forgot the word. What's a Fantasia? Just looked at, and it was all like blue and white, and the text was just like Times New Roman. So I just thought, oh my god, somebody has just done this very quickly. Just literally thought of what I said, bish bash bosh, and then just pressed enter. Now it did look fairly refined, but if I was a tarot card reader, then maybe it may have worked. But when it was philosophy, it just didn't do it. And I thought, well, we're going to have to give this one a little miss here. he did do a revision. I said, let's just use the text and make it a little bit more like 3D. Use some colours. So when I said text, I meant the letters. Just define it into some kind of logo. And then what they did is they just put VOE in 3D and just whacked that over the front image. So yeah, it wasn't a logo. It was just basically a background with text on top. So I didn't quite get what I wanted, and I have had experience of this in the past with designers when you're trying to portray a certain something that you're not even quite sure of yourself. You're really requesting the designer to use their imagination and get something out onto paper which is beyond what you could think of or you have the time to think of. And invariably, that they have. I had a chance to redefine my specifications, which was a very nice service. I guess this is all for $5, so somebody's going to look to just do what they can and then change it over. Obviously, if I doubled the price, then I may have got a lot better service, but it's maybe times 10 that price. I might have got something a bit better, but yeah, it wasn't really going to plan, and I just want to just express some thoughts about that. No way am I really pissed off with the people. I mean, I'm just going to just mention maybe in like the review rating that it wasn't quite to my specification, but hey, what do you expect for $5? This guy's just gonna. I guess you can get a lot of stuff for $5 in India, but there's probably like a little slice from Fiverr and things like that. But yeah, we come back down to this little interesting point. If you really want something done, you pretty much got to do it yourself. Now, I did mention before that I really enjoy dance music. Particularly like the sidechain compressed, bassy French house music. Now, when it came to the music production, I really was hell-bent on getting not just it. I wasn't even to the stage of a bass sound, but just on a drum beat. I wanted a nice boom, like a really nice drum beat. Now, when you use the sound which is given to you by any of these sound processing applications or these what are they called? I can't even remember. But basically, you can put all of your instruments on this multi-track application, and you can play all these sounds. You can like filter, do everything you possibly could imagine. Now, I was just trying to get a drum beat going, but the drum beat was just so tinny sounding, it just didn't really do anything for me. So I spent day on day trying to work out a way to make this drum beat sound better. I tried the simple way of just using a graphic equalizer and just added a bit more to the bass, but that sounded crap still. And there obviously is a method of layering a sound with one sound over another, and there's YouTube videos now which probably can make the process a lot easier. There's probably sound clips which are exactly how you want it to be, and yeah, it's just highly frustrating. And it got to the stage where I gave up. I just couldn't stand it anymore. That I was just, if I weren't going to make a good drum beat, that's usually what was my little filter when I was listening to songs for the first time. If I couldn't find that good drum beat, then what was the purpose of listening to the rest of the song? Because they couldn't be asked to even make a fairly decent drum beat. Now, you could say from an artist's perspective, maybe they wanted to try and do some shitty little drum beat at the start just to get everyone worked up and annoyed, and then go into a really great drum beat a little bit later. So I would sample the song at little different stages, maybe 3 stages throughout the song, just see if there was that change. But that was sort of the measure of a fairly good song, is where that you get that well-produced, fuller sound in a track, and it just wasn't happening for me. So I quit. I just gave up at that point. But there has been particular things which I can remember in my past where have been a little bit fairly more accessible. So I remember I was a little bit more artistically inclined in the school compared to other kids. I remember it's kind of strange. Everyone's selected in school at a certain level, but I can't even remember now. Like, yeah, my art class was like still full of delinquents. So I think I was in that certain grade of my ability, but it was like the lowest end of the ability. So I guess I wasn't with all the smart. No, I think art didn't really matter too much. I think you got all clever kids in there as well as dumb kids in that class. Anyway, irrelevant of what the skills are, because dumb kids can still produce very good art. So yeah, when it came to art, I seemed to enjoy it quite well. I was good at definitions, and I used to like drawing with like pens or pencils, and I wasn't very good with colours. I seemed to be very good at just getting an image and replicating it. I was basically a printer, but I was good at getting an image and replicating it on paper. So there was certain I guess there's a fairly interesting part of art and how that's applied in the mind, and how you can take an image with your eyes and then convert it through into your hands to transfer onto the paper. I guess that's a transfer of communication which is occurring there. But it's an important thing just to see something with your eyes or imagine something with your brain, and then try and convert that onto a different form. Now, it obviously when you apply something and you're trying to get somebody else to do that, you've got a number of filters. You've got the ability, you've got you're not even imagining the thing really that vividly yet, especially from my side. So I was going, yeah, we might be able to do this, might be able to do this. There's a few ideas I can kick around. They all take it for the literal sense. I transfer that in a matter of words, which I've sent out an email. That email gets read, and then obviously there might even be just a certain communication barrier with the terms of like being Indian. So you have to take things very literal rather than taking things a little bit more subjectively, and then you have that person's impression of what you're saying and then reapplying it. So particularly if you're a business and you're trying to do a business plan, you're going to try and carry out those orders pretty much to the mark. You're not going to try and go too far out of the curve, or people will say to you, look, I asked you to do this and you've done the total opposite. So that's the circumstance that we was under. Now, if you've ever had sort of this kind of thing before, I've done certain little a very shitty little, no, it's not shitty, but it was an interesting experience for me anyway, a business venture, and I did web design, and I initially did web design for the page, and it was like the old Dreamweaver way, which is a tool which slightly enables you to do the design of the page, and it did work out fairly well, and I was doing logos, so I've got a fair knowledge of how that works, and that I kind of enjoyed the logo that I created. I think it was quite kind of nice. It did get we did actually pay for an actual designer. We paid him like a fairly good chunk of money, like something like $500 or something for this pleasure to do it for us. So it certainly was a massive profit incentive for that person to do something for us and use his creative skill. So if you pay that person that creative ability, that extra money, they really have to give you something more to that. And he did provide us with a very good product. I remember going through a load of web designers and picking the best ones that I could find online, and then firebombing a load of emails to everybody, and then seeing who could come back to me. And this designer was the most attentive, and I decided to be we decided to pick him straight away because he was most attentive to his needs, our needs. He was empathetic, and he was like, "Yeah, okay, we can do this, we can try that." And he was always willing to redesign and change and try and get really what we wanted on the page. And even though maybe the ideas, what we would say to him, wasn't exactly how he would carry it out, the actual quality of the work was like, oh yeah, we'll keep that anyway. That's fairly good. So that's an interesting concept when we talk about design. I know I mentioned a lot about AI as well in the past, and even when I was creating music on the computer, I know, as I mentioned, I was focusing a lot on the beat. I did try and get like a couple of beat symbols and stuff like that going along. And it's interesting how with creation you can start. You think you're going in one direction, so you're like, okay, I'm going to just do this beat. Let's see if we can create this beat. And just by pure accident, you're creating something else, and you're like, maybe if we can work with that, I can do something with this. So yeah, it's interesting in the concept of where you're in design, that there is different angles that you can. There's basically different routes and different roads which you can approach things. And in terms of where you get to designing something, so somebody's got an image in their mind of how they want something portrayed. So like if you're a movie director and you're like, okay, right, I want this kind of movie to be this really futuristic, dark, bluey screened like movie. And then maybe somebody comes up and says, oh, hold on a minute, let's just try with this yellow filter right now. And then that works really much better than what the blue filter works in the darkness. Then it really just changes the entire approach and the entire route of where something's going. Now, depending on how much, I mentioned this before, how much money is going into this investment plan and how all the producers are saying, right, we definitely need it this way. That new route that has been found on that movie to potentially go a different design route has now been just sort of like disregarded, and that maybe could have been the inspiration and the best change for the movie. But I remember where I mentioned beforehand, where you have a ridiculously massive budget and massive people that have got their ideas and invested a lot of money into something. They really want to get what they've asked for. Now, obviously, they might be open to certain creative ideas and suggestions and things like that along the way. But if a new route and a new route and a new road appears from nowhere, then really, it, like in a creative passion, it should be sort of adopted. Now, people with low budgets and the amateur filmmakers, they can obviously pursue that straight away. Whereas, because they don't really have the budget costs and things like that to go into that sort of creative design aspect. Whereas these big blockbuster movies really do have trouble with going down that creative passion. Now, if you're a good director or a good producer, maybe you could sort of write a note of this and then apply that to a project in the future. And I know a lot of directors probably do that. They just write down notes and say, okay, well, this might be a good concept. Terminator got, I think, a lot of the ideas from the Terminator from James Cameron. There's things that wanted to be worked with, so James Cameron used that on The Abyss, and obviously, the T-1000 liquid metal creature got used in The Abyss because you've got this undersea creature, and he played with different ideas there. I don't think The Abyss was obviously as good as Terminator 2, but even so, he had some creative ideas that he wanted to express, and he just took that on board, and then he just created a new movie just to express those creative ideas. So it's interesting in those respects. Now, one thing that I found, I always do a little research point, probably not enough research, but I do a little bit of a research point just before I start these podcasts. And when it comes to design, you search, okay, what's different ways to design? there is an incredible amount of ways, shapes, and forms of design that is ridiculous, really. And obviously this is just methodologies of approaches to design. I sometimes would say, like, just use your inspiration. I think I mentioned this before, that there's a time between dreams and, like, the subconscious mind, which is the dream mind, and the conscious mind. And if you can pick a little time between those points and just try and get your brain working on thoughts and ideas and inspiration, I think there's a really good thing to dig into there. I know that John McCartney, when he basically dreamt up the entire song of Yesterday. So yesterday, oh my God. Yeah, sorry, I won't sing to you, but literally that song just came into his mind through a dream, and it was literally created. It's a fairly simple song, according to John McCartney. It's just Paul McCartney, in fact. Sorry, not John McCartney. I'm getting the names of the band incorrect there. And all of a sudden, he had this great song, and he could release it pretty much straight away because he was part of the Beatles and mega superstar. So it's very interesting how there is something within that dream state, that a mind of subconsciousness, which can grab ideas and then convert them and spit out pretty rapidly without any trouble. And I always get to the point where I'm very tired one night. Obviously, I was very tired last night, and thinking, okay, I would have loved to do a little bit of research on a different news topic and things like that. And I literally just get to a point of too tired. I can't even look at my phone. And then crash to bed. And then I just, like, a little slight thought before I go to sleep is go, oh no, will I think of anything for tomorrow? Now, I know I've got a load of show notes, but some of the show notes are just, like, a little bit vague for me to really work with. And then I wake up, and then there's always something that's popping into my mind just at that point of waking up, and it's possibly just to do with my dream state that I was having beforehand, especially if I was woken up mid-dream. Obviously, I mentioned about I was dreaming about Donald Trump, and hopefully it wasn't anything that way inclined. And it was just, it was incredible. I've never been really stuck in those terms of just going, okay, right, what shall we work with now? What shall we work with? It's never really been an issue. So I'm really, I can really promote those creative ideas in terms of your dream state, your subconscious state, and your conscious state, and working somewhere in between the two of those. I guess I could state I'm more of a morning person. Maybe that's where I find my dreams and inspirations happening to me better. But everyone is obviously different in their approaches. Everyone is very different in their approaches to music writing, in their movie creation. There is a number of different methodologies, and the way that we create things in different manners and shapes and forms is the spice of life. It's incredible how we can create so many different vivid creations that give us all sorts of different outcomes. So I just wanted to mention about broad design methods of to focus on, basically. So one of the ones that major areas to design, well, using ideas to base your design upon. One is divergence, so exploring possibilities and constraints of inherent situations by applying critical thinking through quantitative and qualitative research methods to create a new understanding. Now, I guess that's just basically critical thinking. So where we look at critical thinking, we just start up throwing questions at a certain problem or a certain statement, take different angles, look at different points, try and argue the basis either side, use a fair amount of deduction to work out whether something is true or not, work out whether something is violent or not. work out where the violence originates from. Once that deconstruction happens, then rewrapping it up and potentially having a different angle on it and a different analogy on something to create your new idea. So with this creation, I would say this is more to do with story writing and film creation. I think that's a good way of approaching movies, and I think that's really like the best science fiction movies do have this approach. And I guess there's not many political movies out there. I think everyone's like, I don't want to watch another political movie, but there are some good political movies out there. So yeah, that's a very good creative way. I think that's obviously really working with consciousness there. But I guess inspiration can originate from the subconscious originally, and just go, okay, well, yeah, that's that point. So yeah, critical thinking can give you and definitely throw up some amazing thought-provoking ideas. So that's quite good. There's transformation, redefining specifications of design solutions, which can lead to better guidelines for traditional contemporary designs, activities, architecture, graphic, industrial information. So let's work on that one. So redefining specifications, there's a bloody word jumble here on this thing. Redefining specifications of design solutions. So what I'm thinking here is like, hey, here's the table redesigned as a slightly more sleeker thing, and a table doesn't really need to have legs anymore. We can simplify it by letting it float in the air, or something on those kind of lines. So, or maybe just using that table for something totally different. So getting that object and redefining its is what it can provide to you. So instead of having a bus, now we can convert that bus into a cafe, and using a different design concept for that. And I kind of like converted bus cafes and things like that. I don't know why. It's kind of interesting going to those kind of places. Or maybe I remember I've been to Christchurch in New Zealand, which had a number of earthquakes, and they have been using container crates on the big ships as like restaurants now, because everything's been a lot of the housing and everything has been decimated. But it's kind of interesting how everybody's working from container crates now. So yeah, transformation. Using something and then transforming it for a different purpose is a very interesting design methodology. I'd like to sort of work on whether that's conscious or subconscious. I guess, again, I think in every single design thing, you can probably apply these in both. But I guess where you probably need, again, fair amount of consciousness for these designs to happen. Remember, there's like our minds have a certain level of pattern recognition. So we see a pattern that occurs in a lot of things. So if we see that one object kind of appears, like we've inside a room now, and then maybe that inside that room is inside that bus, then we have that certain pattern recognition, and then we go, okay, yes. So now we can really apply that to making a restaurant, because we're always inside a restaurant there. So there is a certain level of pattern recognition, and I guess this pattern recognition and design is always very important, especially like where you come to comedy. In any sphere, this pattern recognition is always going to be fairly helpful with giving you certain levels of inspiration. Another design concept. There's not many on this list, is there, really? Okay. There's so many others, though. I mean, I'm probably not mentioning much else. Sustainability, managing the process of exploring, redefining, and prototyping design solutions continually over time. So I guess this is more going into the engineering sphere of things. So the car of the 1920s has obviously been I guess you probably don't have quite the same model because it gets completely made over, but I guess you could have some car that gets redesigned over time, certain refinements which would happen to them over time, and especially when you're designing like something on a computer, like a website or something, you can always just touch up this and that, and I always like that sort of idea of just adding something better and more improved to the look of an image. And one of the things I always think about is this. There's this guy that was in his, I think he was like a janitor of a school, and what he wanted to do is create a labyrinth or like a maze type image. And I think the labyrinth has got one route and the maze has got multiple routes. But anyway, this pattern or this like design that he was creating just started on maybe just one like sheet of paper, and then he expanded it and added to it, and he's just created this vast thing. You'll be able to look at it like maybe janitor labyrinth creation loft or something like that in Google, and you could see this massive thing that he's created, which is so vast, and he's just added and added and added. Now, obviously, he's just added the same shit to, or the sort of pretty much the same pattern to it, and maybe he's gone different angles, and maybe he wanted to add a few little bits here and there, but it's just this the certain level of adding on to all of this, all the work, and then until you finally create this amazing product is very interesting. But obviously, in the terms of just looking at a car and saying, okay, right, now how can we improve this car without obviously not having a car anymore? And there's a number of different angles in terms of safety, in terms of drivability, in terms of, I think that's one thing they always like mention with cars, there needs to be some of that certain level of sexiness, of status. So when somebody purchases a car, they've got that, oh, look at me, to everybody. So that's obviously I would recommend the main purpose of the car is the ability for you to get in from A to B, as a lot of people say. Well, that's what all I need a car for, to get me to A to B, keep the cost down low. So I guess obviously a car can be designed in multiple different ways and aspects to either perform that function or be very sexy. So I'm sure being very sexy and being very A to B is totally two different design patterns, but maybe you could merge the two of those and make a nice killing in profits. So yeah, there is many design routes to apply. If you just look at, I recommend just searching on Google just different design methods. I think sometimes it's a little bit different. I think sometimes I'd say like stay with your mind and stay with your own design concepts as much as you can. But there is obviously, if you're really getting stuck on certain things, use some guidelines and use some inspirations, different methodologies of how to think, to apply ways of designing things. So, but I would always say that trial and error is a fascinating way of designing and creating concepts, and definitely when it comes to your subconsciousness, there is something going on there which really that daydreamer's mind does have some beautiful, wonderful ideas that can sprout out incredible inspirations and things like that. So definitely work with that. I'm not just talking about images. We can talk about music. We can talk about stories. We can talk about, I don't know, you can think of a different concept out of those spheres of sense. Maybe we can think of some kind of beautiful massaging system that can massage you beautifully without having to be too sexual. But yeah, there is endless designs out there, and where we look around in our environment and we look at things, there is a certain level of pattern recognition. We look at all these different images and then we create, we can use those images and apply them in different methods and shapes. Where we look, remember that there's quite an interesting part where pattern recognition is a lot stronger in certain areas than others. So where it comes to where we look at somebody's face, faces, like you would think, oh yeah, all faces are very different. They're all like kind of, there's big noses, there's like small eyes. I don't know why I'm mention. All different kind of features that different people can have. But it's actually, if you think of it, a face isn't really going to be too much different to what a hand is, and a hand ain't going to be too much different to what a foot is. Now, obviously, there's different shapes and sizes, and then you can think to yourself, okay, well, a body's not going to be too much different to another body. Now, there are like large bodies and there's small bodies and things like that, but in the whole grand scheme of things, everything's pretty much to the same. I would imagine when we look at like Fibonacci charts and stuff like that, the divergence of a face from one spectrum to the other will be the same divergence of the body shape from one side to the other, I imagine. So, therefore, we still have an amazing ability to recognize people's faces, way, way beyond our ability to recognize somebody's hand from another hand, unless there was some significant mark on it. So remember, there is extreme pattern recognition which is occurring in the brain when it comes to looking at somebody's face. Other things we're not really that focused on. We're not really looking at trees that much and how differently they look from one another. We're not looking at patterns and things like that. One interesting pattern as well is that I can't remember the word, but the thing of design and the way that the world is shaped in species and stuff is that we can be all sliced into half, and we're like a mirror image of ourselves. So if you take a mirror and you stick it down from our heads to our crotch, you will see that you can see that we're the same like person when we're split in half. So there is a design method applied in a lot of things, especially if you look around in the world that you're in right now. Maybe not the computer with the mouse, because the mouse is on the side, but you look around and you split everything in half. There is there's a definite I wish I knew the word anyway, but there's a definite splitting of everything that you look into. And it's like, you would think, okay, maybe if we're in a world of random shapes, you would think that everything's just all random, and you got the left side which is a bit like fuzzy, and the right side which is a bit more straight. But it's not. Everything is fairly symmetrical and can all be split in half. And it's applied throughout nature in a lot of things. And when you look around your room, you can obviously split your room in half if it's a square shape, unless it's some really weird angle. But there is a lot of symmetry which is occurring in the world. One of the aspects of fertility is to see the symmetry of one side of the face to the other side of the face, and that can be deemed as a certain level of genetic quality, saying that there's not too much mutations which are going on in that body. So yeah, there is certain things of life which is created all around us, and there is certain forms. I know I'm going into a little bit of Plato stuff about the perfect form and things like that, but I guess there is certain levels of what we are used to in life and how people talk to us and discuss things, and saying, oh, she's quite pretty. But I guess in terms of what we think and what our body says, we say, okay, well, this is attractive to me, and this is my impulse to that thing. I'm talking more of a sexual attraction here, but in general, you can look at objects and you can see a certain logo and say, whoa, that is a fairly cool logo there, and say, yeah, that's amazing. And you could say that's a fairly cool image of something. If you look at a photo, you can certainly look at a photo and go, wow, that is an incredible photo. I can definitely see the image and the beauty in that. Why is this truck stuck there? No, it's fine. It's fine. I almost thought that truck had just parked in the middle of the road. Yeah, so you can split a truck in half, you can split the road in half, and there's a fairly decent amount of symmetry which is being applied throughout the world that we live in. Now, if we think of that design concept and we think of how we are applying that in life, that is a kind of strange angle to go on. Obviously, I'm just throwing ideas. I don't really want to get you into this kind of symmetry pattern designing for the rest of your life. You can apply yourself to any other means. Yeah, and remember just from converting senses to another sense. So there are feelings, and artists will try and portray feelings in a visual manner to you in a painting. So they will take on these feelings and then they will apply that to the page, like you think of Picasso and things like that. And they get the feelings of themselves and then they apply that into an image. I've mentioned this one before. There is a man online, and he's taken a number of mind-alterating substances, so drugs, and he's drawn a number of pictures once he's been under the influence. Now, I guess drugs can give you certain different feelings, and he's transferred that imagery onto the pages. And I guess in a certain definition of terms, he has been fairly artistic in those respects, and definitely it's highly interesting to me to see that person using all of those drugs and portraying it onto the page. It's quite concerning at the same time that he's putting himself through a lot of these drugs, which create very disgusting images of himself sometimes, and some of them are quite pretty and cartoony and quite funny, but some of the images is like, shit, I don't want to take that drug in it anytime soon. But yeah, just think of how we are making conversions and communications with our design, and we're transferring it from one sphere to the other, from one sense, and we're communicating it through our bodies to the page, and we're trying to say, okay, like, this is my design that I'm trying to communicate from one side of the spectrum to the other. I'm trying to think of something actually off the top of my head here. I remember dimensions. Yeah, I was thinking about dimensions. So like we're going from 2D to 3D, from one sensory perception to another sensory perception. So there is patterns and obviously the major thing with philosophy is it's always interesting to take different perspectives and view back at that point. And once you take a different perspective of maybe an argument or maybe something, an image, and you change it and you remix it and this and that, it does give you a different sense of clarity. I know when some people take drugs, it gives them a different sense of the world. And definitely there is certain amounts of humbleness which occurs when different perspectives is taken. In the art scene, obviously, I guess there is an element of being a philosopher and trying to be... Why is that person parking all over the place? Is trying to be a philosopher in a certain respect, but in the art form. So there is some kind of design ideas for you. Go out there and get a sheet of paper and some crayons and go wild for me and just upload them back. Or if you can create me a beautiful logo design, I'm very picky, so you're probably not going to get me to put it on the website. But if it is incredible, then I will put it on. Yeah, just work with those ideas, apply it in your life, and try something new. If you just take steps to just try something new for every day, I can guarantee you will feel more benefit from that than just sitting back and watching the TV as you normally do. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure as always. If you've got any comments, if you've got any other ideas that you can add to this podcast, it'll be gladly